height 3. For 7 we get a triangle of height 4. 9 we get a triangle of height 5. So I guess you might notice the pattern. The height of the triangle is n plus 1 by 2, right? It's basically, or let's say the ceiling of n by 2. That is the height of the triangle. So let's confirm our hypothesis with entering a random number like 19. So if you enter 19, the height of the triangle is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just a second, I missed the line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, it's 10, which is what we expected, right? 19 plus 1 by 2. So now what you're supposed to do is to code it up in any language which you like. You should be doing it in Python because you just want to get this running quickly. You don't really care about speed or efficiency. So you can just code up a simple solution in Python. It's not really hard. You can just figure out the spaces for each of the levels and then print the stars. Right now I won't be coding anything because I want to keep the session as language agnostic as possible. Right. So many of you might be programmers in JavaScript or C, C++, Java, whatever language, right? I don't want to focus or drill down on a single language. You just need to explain the logic here, right? So as we saw, this was quite easy, very easy, a little too easy, right? No worries, let's move on to the next problem. Next one is the encrypted conversation, right? So right now I'll get out of this thing and I pressed 0 to get out of this thing, and now I'll go to the second problem, which is the encrypted conversation. Fine. So they ask us to enter a binary number, a number which only has zeros and ones and is greater than 0. So okay, we can't enter 0, we need to enter something greater than 0. Fine. Let us enter 1, get 1. Right. So the general thinking process is to start with simple numbers. That way you can figure out what is happening. So we'll start with simple numbers, 1, then 1 0, which is 2 in binary. So we get 2. Then 1 0 0, which is 4 in binary. So in case any of you doesn't have experience with binary, binary is basically a number but represented in base 2. So what we do usually is we represent numbers in base 10. So 100 is like, so for example 1 2 3 4 is like 4 ones, 3 tens, 2 hundreds, 1000s. Right. In binary it's not like this. It's basically, if there's something like this, we'll see 1 ones, 1 twos, 0 fours, 1 eights. So we are counting in the powers of 2 instead of powers of 10. So pretty basic stuff. Right. So we put in 4, we get 4. We put in 8, we get 8. So you might think it's as simple as just put the number in and get the number. Now let's try some complex examples. Let's say we put in 11, like sorry, not 11, but 1 and 1, which is 3. We instead get 9, which is not equal to 3. Okay. Let's put 1 1 1 or 1 1 0. Right. We'll just shift it one by one. For 1 1 0, we get 36. The original number was 6. 2 plus 4 6, and we get it square. We got the same thing when we entered 1 1, right? Let us enter something more like something random but with 2 1s, right? Because our pattern here is 2 1s. So we enter this. What exactly is this? This is 1 0 1 0 2 0 4s, right? 1 8 and 1 16. So that is 8 plus 16, which is 24. And the square of 24 is indeed 576. Yep, it's 576, right? I just opened up Python here just to do some quick calculation, so we don't have to do any mental math, right? So okay, this is squaring the numbers, but only when there are 2 ones, right? Let's see what happens if there are 3 ones. Okay, 3 ones is 343. All right, so 343, how? 3 ones means 7, right? 3 ones is 7. 4 plus 2 plus 1. We get 343, which is 7 cubed, right? 7 cubed, which is 343, right? Let's try with again 3 ones, but let's shift it, right? Or let's shift it. Sorry, I shifted. I forgot to shift it. With 2744. So we input 14 and we get 2744, which again, if we confirm, is the cube of 14, right? Just to confirm this once again, let's enter 1101, in which all the 1 are in contiguous. In that case, you get 2197, which is what we should expect if we square the number. So 1101 is what? It's 4 plus 8, 12 plus 13. So 13 cube is 2197, right? So I think you might see the pattern, right? The power which we are supposed to raise the original number by is the number of ones, right? So let's say if there are 5 ones in a number, 5 ones in a number, and the numbers value in binary is equal to, I don't know, 27, right? I don't know if it's possible, but it's equal to 27. Our answer should be 27 to the power 5, whatever this number is, right? So this is what we are supposed to do. So I suppose the logic is clear. Please let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. Also, you can ask any doubts in between if you want to. So basically the logic is figure out the number of ones in the binary representation and raise the binary value to that number of ones, right? So if I enter something like 11011, so what I'll be doing is that I'll be raising this number, I'll calculate what this number is, I'll be raising it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. So I'll raise it to the power of 5. That will give me the answer, right? So you can calculate that, you can figure it out, but trust me, this is the correct answer, right? So right, the learning itself is that start with smaller numbers, try and form some patterns, see if the output also follows that pattern, and then build a correlation between the input and output, right? Cool. So yeah, we figured it out, right? Congrats. That's nice. We got 2 problems covered. Now we have the third problem, which is revertigo. Okay, this asks us to enter an integer between 10 and 1000. Fine, we'll enter an integer like, I don't know, 11. We get 1.0 when we enter 11. Fine, we'll enter 12. We get 1.75 when we enter 12. Okay, so whenever you get fractions as an output for an integer, just try and multiply or divide them and figure out if that's a whole number or that's something, meaningful. So let's say I divide 12 by 1.75. What I get is 6.87514, which is kind of useless. And multiplied by 1.75, I get 21.0. Okay, so you might be able to figure out the relation already by now, but just in case, let's try another number. Multiply, we input 13, we get 2.385. Again, let's see the product of these. We get 31.00499, right? That's because of truncation, but we can safely assume the output was 31, right? So as you see, this thing is basically finding a ratio which reverses the given number, right? So if we input 31, it will give us 0.419, and 31 into 0.419 is simply 12.9888, which is basically 13 again, truncation errors. So the thing is, we'll get a ratio which will be the, so when we input a certain number, we'll get a ratio of the reverse number by the current number. I hope that makes sense. So 31 into ratio is something, I know this is not a real code, but 31 into ratio is 13. So our ratio is basically 13 divided by 31. Increase the font size to make it more visible. Yeah, 13 by 31. That goes for every other number, right? 12 by 21, whatever. Now let's try a number of our own. Let's say we try 29, right? So 29 should be giving us 0.315217, etc. Let's try 29. We went wrong somewhere, I guess. Yeah, sorry, it should be the other way around. My bad. It should be the other way around. Yeah. So this is 3.17. If you enter 92, we'll get the other ratio, right? If you enter 92, we'll get this ratio, 3.15 ratio. Yeah, so that's, you can implement it in any language of your choice. You have to just create a function to reverse the number, then convert that to integer, and then take the ratio, right? You can use Python. Python will be the easiest for such tasks. Use any other language as well, right? So yeah, well done. Yeah, we did the challenge. Up comes the next challenge. Yeah, numbers on the wall. Right, this challenge has been left as an exercise to the reader or the viewer. Right, you are supposed to do it on your own. You have the code. Sorry, you have the binary. You have a PC. Just do it on your own. Right, nothing fancy. It's kind of similar. They ask us to enter a number between 2 and 10,000, and we get a float in return. Right. So just do that yourself. That's like your homework, if that makes sense. Then there's Doug Judy. Right, I think it's pronounced like that. So yeah, this problem. In this, we are supposed to enter a string. So this is the first time we are supposed to enter something which is not an arithmetic number or float, right? This is the first time we get something like a string. All right, we'll enter a string. We'll start with a really simple string. of length greater than 4. So 5 A's. Okay, we get 5 A's in return for 5 A's. We'll enter 5 B's. We get 5 B's again. We'll enter 5 C's. Yeah, we get 5 C's. So yeah, start with simple patterns, you'll figure it out. We'll just take a random letter to figure it out again. We get 5 K's, yeah. So this is fine. Now what if we enter A, B? What if we change a single letter? We'll get B, 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 C. Okay, so what if we enter same thing again? We get C, 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 D. Okay, it's like increasing each of the letters by 1, right? By what I mean by increasing is basically the next letter for B is like C, right? My bad. So if you follow the ASCII table, the B will have a value of 66 and C will have a value of 67. So the next letter for B is C. Similarly, the next letter for A is B, right? It's increasing the letters by 1. Cool enough, yep. We don't yet know why that happened, but we'll soon figure it out. Let's enter A, C. It will give us C, 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 E, right? This time it increased everything by 2 letters because A, B, C, right? 2 letters. All right. So what if we do something like, sorry, A, B, 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 B. Yeah, what if we do A, B, B? It increases everything by B, C, D, like 3 letters. Okay. No, 4 letters, my bad, 4 letters. So odd E minus odd A. Odd is basically the ordinal or the value of the character in ASCII set. That's like 4. So it increased everything by 4 letters. Okay. So what if I remove one of the B's, right? What if I do 2 A's and 3 B's? It increased by not 4 but 3, right? What if 3 A's and 2 B's? 2 B's increased by 2. We already know that for 4 A's and a single B, it increases by 1. So I think you can see the pattern if you consider A to be 0 and B to be 1. What it does is that it first sums up along the whole string. So it sums up the character weights or values, whatever you want to say. It sums up A, which is 0, B1, 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 B1. So 4, right? So the total sum of the character, let's define some sort of thing as a sum. So the total sum is the sum of the characters such that A is at 0, B is at 1, C is at 2, D is at 3, etc., on and on. Right. So if we get the sum, we'll get what? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 4, which is basically the amount of difference which we get when we compare the result. So we are summing up the character values and then incrementing each of the character by that much value. Okay. Now the edge case would be when we fall out on the edge, right? What if we enter A, Z, 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 right? In this case, you can't go beyond Z, right? So what they do is that, yeah, they basically give the same output, I suppose. I'll again try a different one. Yeah. Okay. They loop back around, right? They loop back around. Also, the second thing which you should notice here is that A, Z, 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 Z gave the same output, right? It didn't change any output. So, but according to our logic, if we go by the logic, then odd of Z, my bad, that function is kind of in capital, minus odd of A is 25, right? So what we had was 25 into 4, but somehow it didn't increment anything at all, right? So to figure out if it's coincidental or not, let us just enter A, B, Z, Z, and Y. So what we are doing is right now also the sum of the word is the same. You just increase the letter. Sorry, my bad. We'll do B, Z, Z, Y. Sorry, B, Z, 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 Y. Right. We just increase the value of A and decrease the value of Z. It's giving us the same input, right? So this means that it might be taking the remainder, right? So it might be doing something like difference divided by difference and the remainder with respect to 100 or something like that, right? It would be truncating all the values beyond 100. Of course, now it's up to you to figure it out, right? This is more than enough to get you start going, because after in this session, you are supposed to figure stuff out, right? Yeah. So kind of problem solved, right? Basically, just figure out that you have to sum all the characters and then increment each of the character by that. We have problem 6, which is Anish and Vishal. Right. I'll also again give hints for this question. I won't completely explain the question because you'll probably figure it out yourself, right? And if you haven't felt by now, I definitely think you would have felt by now how tedious and boring this is, right? This is not at all interesting, but this is the intended solution according to the Shastra coordinators. I asked them, according to them, this is the way we are supposed to solve challenges. But I'll show you guys an awesome way to solve these challenges, right? You don't need to listen to what they say. I'll show you guys an awesome way to solve the challenges, like which will make you feel like a hacker or something, right? Okay then. So number of elements, let's start with the lowest value possible, 2 elements. We'll have to enter the element 1, which we could enter as. So it's asking for an elements, right? It's asking for a set of elements. We said we'll give it, it's asking for somewhere between 2 and 10 elements. We said we'll give it 2 elements, right? So enter the first element as 1 and second is 1. Right? Try to keep things simple and then bring it up. So we get 1, right? Nothing special. What if try 2 and 2? We get 0.5. Okay. Cool. 0.5. What if we try 3, what do you call 3 and 3? We get 0.333. Okay. So this feels like as if it's 1 by x or something like that, right? But we'll soon figure out it's something different than that. But let's try 1 and 2. We get 0.55556. Sorry, 0.556. Now the thing is, we don't know what sort of fraction is 0.556 equal to, right? So if you experiment a little bit, if you try and multiply 0.556 by, I don't know, 3, okay, not a round number, 4, not a round number, 6, not a round number, 7, not a round number, 5, no, 9, okay, 9 has a round number, right? 9 is 5, sorry, 9 is equal to 5. So basically, what we have is 5 by 9 equals to 0.556, whatever we got here. So we know that somehow they have divided 5 by 9. So how could we make 5? Like 5 can be written as 1 plus 4. Again, this is something which you will have to guess, right? That is why this is not a good approach, but this is what they suggest. So 5, of course, is not a code, it's not legit code. So yeah, 5 equals 1 plus 4, 9 equals 1 plus 8. Yeah. Yeah, 5 equals 1 plus 4, 9 equals 1 plus 8, right? So can you see a pattern? Okay, let's try another number, right? It's hard to see a pattern between both of these. Let's try another number. Sorry, okay. Now one of the things that we should notice for the nicer approach is that when we close the binary, what happened is that value error, invalid literal for int with base 10, etc., etc. If you guys have done Python, you definitely realize that this is an error which comes from a Python file. If you are running a Python script, this is the error which comes from a Python script. This trace back and everything. This is how a Python error looks like. But if we see the file, it's not a Python script, right? If we output the output, it is basically just random, right? It is garbage, it's gibberish. It's definitely not a Python script. But its errors look like Python script. We'll touch upon this later when we do the nicer approach, right? So in Anish and Vishal, we can just try again. That was some random issue. We can try again. For 1 and 3, we get 0.357. Let's try and multiply 0.357 by say, I don't know, 11. Okay, 11 doesn't work. 12, 13. Yeah, you'll have to do some of these things. Yeah, if you multiply it by 14, we get 5, almost 5, 4.99995. So basically what our number here is 5 by 14.
10 by 28.
Yeah, sum of squares by sum of cubes.
1 plus 3 square by 1 plus
5 by 14. So again, we get the numerator the same. So yeah, I get you guys. Yeah, you are on the right track. So the numerator is same, which means the element 1, the numerator will only depend on the element 1 and denominator will depend on element 2. And numerator is 1 plus 4 and 4 is 2 squared. What is 2 here? 2 is like the number of elements. And what is 14? 14 is 3 cubed plus just a second.
If you see it as 10 by 28, it will be better.
Yeah, 10 by 20. Sorry, yeah. 5 by 14, if we make it as 10 by 28, we'll get what we are looking for, which is 3 squared plus 1, which was last time it was 2 squared plus 1, 3 cubed plus 1. Yes. And here we are also, right now we can't say whether we are squaring or cubing the first element, right? Because it's 1. So let's try and enter something like 2, right? So let's say 2 and 3. If we enter 2 and 3, we get 0.371. And 0.371, I guess we can just use our hypothesis, right? Our hypothesis is that numerator will be 2 plus 3 into 3, yeah, which is 11, and denominator will be 2 plus 3 into 3 into 3, the cube, which is 29, and 11 by 29, yeah, that is exact. No, that's not what we get, right? So something, we are missing something probably. Right. So of course you can just try out all these things, right? You'll hit dead ends like this. You'll have to figure it out yourself. But the thing is, try and find a pattern in your input and then try and replicate that pattern in the output, right? Try and find some sort of constancy, right? For example, here we found out that see the numerator depends only on the element 1. That is sort of a relationship or constancy constraint which we found out. So you are supposed to find out that sort of constraints or that sort of thing, right? Yeah, so this is again, you could do it on yourself because right now you have enough knowledge to figure it out. Yeah, the correct answer, you are supposed to find it, right? I thought I'll finish it, but I wait to get to that part. Yeah.
1 square plus 2 square, like that. 1 square plus 3 square. 1 square plus 3 square in denominator 1 cube plus 3 cube, like that.
Okay, 1 plus 3 into 1 plus 3 cube.
2 square plus 3 square divided by 2 cube plus 3 cube, like that.
Okay, 2 square plus 3 square. Okay, 2 square plus, sorry, and 3 square, 13, 2 cube plus 3 cube, 35, 13 by 35. Yep, it matches. So now you'll have to verify it yourself, right? Now this is done for 2 elements. Let's say you found out the correct thing and it works for arbitrary numbers. Let's say it works for almost random numbers like 17 and 13, 14 and 20, something like that. Now you'll have to figure out what's the rule for like 4 elements or 7 elements. You'll have to figure that out, right? But I'm leaving that up to you, right? Because this is, again, as I told you, this is kind of boring, right? This is what they want us to do, but this is not fun after a few problems. Yeah, so this error you see again, right? This is a Python error. This is a classic signature of a Python error. Just keep that in mind. We'll be using that later. Yeah, so you can do the rest of the problems on your own as well because there's not much difference in difficulty of this problem and the other problems. After this problem, the other problems are almost as as big as this one. After solving those problems, you'll realize that it's not so easy to just guess and do this stuff, right? It's not even interesting at all. So what else could you do, right? What else could we learn? Like, also, we aren't learning anything in this, right? This is not programming. This is not coding. So what could we possibly learn, right? What if there was a what if there was a better and more reliable way to do it, right? What if? Well, let me tell you, there's no need for a what if. There is indeed a better way to do this, and it's called reverse engineering. You can Google it up. It's quite a general concept. Reverse engineering, as Wikipedia describes, is a process or method through the application of which one attempts to understand through deductive reasoning how a device, process, system, or a piece of software accomplishes a task with very little insight into exactly how it does it. So basically what it does is that it tries to reverse the logic, right? Basically reverse engineer everything. It instead of creating something, it tries to take a piece which has been created and reverse engineers it. It is very common in hardwares, right? In hardware, let's say there's a proprietary hardware and you don't know how it works. You don't know what its specification is. You can open it up and look at all the different transistors and everything and figure it out, right? I don't exactly think you can look at the transistors, but all the necessary components and you can figure it out yourself. In our case, we are concerned with the software part of this reverse engineering. We are concerned about reverse engineering the program called RC final given to us. So what we are supposed to do is to reverse the process of creating a binary from the source and instead obtain the source from the binary. So it's the other way around. We are not supposed to create a program, but we are supposed to create source code from a given program. It sounds very interesting, to be honest, right? So does anyone even care about it, right? Does anyone even care about this reverse engineering thing or whatever? Right, you wouldn't expect this, it's more than you would expect, right? It is widely used in cases when one is creating an application which has to be compatible with closed source software. some proprietary or closed source software where the source code isn't available, right? Let's say if you want to write an app which uses some Windows syscalls and Windows has no documentation of it and you can't even view the source code, then you are supposed to reverse engineer the code on your own and figure out what exactly happens when I ask Windows to do this, right? For Linux, it's an open source operating system, so you can look at the source code and figure out this is what happens. But for Linux, Mac OS, all those things you don't know, so you'll have to reverse engineer it. And that is why one of the reasons I say I'm a proud proponent of open source software, because it is much superior in terms of developer experience. You won't have to drudge through lines of assembly or lines of obfuscated code to figure out what it does, right? Of course, there are other implications as well. There's better security, better privacy, clear licensing and all. But yeah, so now some real world examples. There's this thing called Samba. It runs on a lot of servers, right? If you are doing any hacking boxes or anything, Samba is a very common service running on a lot of servers. And it had to reverse engineer unpublished Windows file system API to provide interoperability with Windows systems. So it was meant for interoperability with Windows system. But since Windows developers didn't release their source code, these guys had to reverse engineer everything to figure out what happens under the hood. There's a tool called Wine. So if you use Linux and if you ever had to use a tool which is not available in Linux, you'd probably stumble across Wine. It is a tool which allows you to run Windows applications on Linux. And it also had to reverse engineer undocumented Windows syscalls and API to be able to run Windows applications on Unix platforms, right? Then there's OpenOffice or LibreOffice. LibreOffice is the one which is being currently regularly maintained. They also had to reverse Microsoft Office's document format so that they could open it, edit it, do all those things, because Microsoft doesn't provide this, right? So all these examples are only about Microsoft, but you can find similar examples for all proprietary systems like Mac OS and any other proprietary system, right? iOS, etc. So what are the tools used for reverse engineering? There are a lot of tools, right? This is quite a interesting area, right? There's this tool called Ghidra, which is developed by NSA. You guys must know NSA, right? National Security Agency. It's like the hackers, where hackers gather, US hackers. I am just kidding. I'm not trying to be cringe, but yeah, it's a pretty high level agency, and that tool is also really good, right? It's open source, so you can download it for free. You can view the source code. It's written in Java. You should try it out. Then there's IDA Pro, which is proprietary. This is also again a really powerful tool. Then there are Radar, A2, Ryzen, Cutter, the ones which I contribute in, right? These are also open source tools for reverse engineering. Z64DBG, this is mainly for Windows binaries. So if you have a video game and you want to figure out a way to increase your points, you want to figure out where the point counter is, you can use this and change your points so that in your game you are now at leaderboard position 1 or whatever, right? This is also one of the reverse engineering tools. Then there's Binary Ninja, which is also a proprietary tool, right? So there are a vast variety of these tools. There are many other which I haven't listed, but yeah, you can search them online. Yep. So what will we be doing, right? What will we be doing for this case? So we'll now try and reverse engineer the given binary to figure out what it does. Instead of just entering random inputs and guessing the relation between the input and output, which is honestly boring, we look at the instruction that the script executes. We'll look at what exactly the script is doing. Right? We'll look at the logic, real logic, instead of figuring out like by guessing it or something. So live hacking, yes. Okay, so if something goes wrong, please forgive me. Yeah, this is a meme which accurately represents my situation right now. Okay. So I'll set it to presenter view only. Yep. All right, so I have a virtual machine open right now. I'm using Kali Linux not to be elite or anything, only because it has all my tools. If I need to do something there, I'll have my tools there. That's why I'm using this virtual machine. So we'll now go into this virtual machine. Yeah, I hope the screen is visible, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Also. Yeah, also you guys, if you want me to slow down or speed up, just let me know. Now is the part which will be the most interesting, right? So you'll get an insight on how usually this stuff happens. So in my case, I have this thing settled here. I have copied all the things in this folder, right? So we have the same thing in this folder. I go to the Linux executables folder. I have the RC final. I can run it. It will give me the same old things and I execute the program, right? This is the program. Now, the usual thing which one does is to just open up Ghidra, right? The NSA tool which I told you about. I'll open up Ghidra, right? I don't exactly know what is happening, so I'll open it up. Just a second, it will take a moment. So opening past project, I don't want the past project. No, I don't want an old project. I'll create a new project, right? Non-shed project. Yeah, this is some boilerplate stuff that you would need to do. Sorry for this, but yeah, I just wanted to give you a live sort of thing. I didn't do anything from before. I have it ready, but you have to go through this boilerplate stuff. We'll create a directory called Ghidra. We'll save everything there. Yeah. Our project name would be RC, reverse coding, right? Finish, yep. Now we'll import a binary, the binary which we will be using, right? So we have to go, sorry, we will have to go exactly where our binary is. There it is. Select file to import. Okay. It gave us the analysis. It's like, I'm sorry if it's, I'll zoom in. It gave us the analysis. It is a x86 executable, which is basically the architecture. x86 Little Indian 64-bit. So my PC is 64-bit. It is Little Indian. It has Intel x86 processor. Right, see, Indianness is little. So this is like the stuff which you'll probably get come to know when you are learning low-level assembly and all those sort of things. Right. It has this thing called PyData, which again makes us feel that it might be a Python script which is compiled, right? Anyways, let's go ahead, right? Let's go ahead. Let's say okay, and let's let's open this, right? Let's open this. I'm sorry, I didn't open the file. Yeah, now it will open up. I would like to analyze it, right? It's asking me if I should analyze. I should analyze it. Doing its analysis. Yep, it's done. So now we can look at all the functions, right? Here are all the functions. So in here, if we find main, we can just have a look at main. Right. I know this is not the right way to go, right? Soon enough, we will realize that we can't go any farther from this, but I just want to make you guys go through the whole process so that you like get an idea of how exactly it is. Let's search for main, right? I'll search for main. We have this libc start main, but okay, but it doesn't seem to show anything. Right? Its assembly is unknown and all. We had a few other functions as well which were unnamed, right? Which had no names at all. You can just go there. These also kind of look random, right? So usually you would manually decompile these instructions and do it yourself, but right now these functions look kind of random. This is a function which doesn't look random. I'll add the decompiler video, decompiler video. So this is the function's decompilation. This is the source code of the function, right? So we see it's doing some random stuff, saying warning file already exists, should not, but should not, etc., etc. We never saw something like this in our code, right? This is something definitely not right. You open this function, it also does something random, right? This function also mod is null %s failed to get any py object, right? This is some random stuff, but notice that there's again references to Python, right? So this is our key, right? We should now be able to guess correctly that this was a Python script compiled to an executable file. Let me close Ghidra because Ghidra won't be able to help us anymore. Let me go close Ghidra. So what we know is that it was a Python script which was compiled to a binary, and way to do this is called PyInstaller. PyInstaller, right, just read its description. Yeah. PyInstaller bundles the Python application and all its dependencies into a single package. The user can run the package app without installing a Python interpreter or any modules. This is basically what is happening, right? They created a Python application and converted it to an executable file. This is what is happening. So now we could look up ways to extract archives, extract Python script from executable, right? Extract Python script from executable, etc., etc. The thing is, I won't bore you with that. I know what is supposed to be done, so I'll do it. So the thing is, there's this thing called PyInst extractor. There's this thing called PyInst extractor. This is a tool, right? Okay, there's no help menu, but this is a tool which will help you to extract Python bytecode and all those different things from a PyInstaller file. I'll explain you what exactly is happening. Just a moment. Yeah, it extracted something and it gave a few warnings. The script is running in a different Python version than the one used to build the executable. Please run this in Python 3.7. Right, it missed the decimal point, but yeah, okay. Please run this in Python 3.7. Right, keep this in mind. This will be really helpful. We'll be using this, right? So it said, please run this script in Python 3.7. Current version does not match. The current version is Python 3.9.2, which is not the version which we are looking for. We're looking for 3.7. Okay. Now let's do a list of the directories. We got something like rc final extracted. Let's list that directory, rc final extracted. Okay, we have a lot of files. All right, before you get overwhelmed, let me just explain what happened. So see, this file which we are seeing right now, the ELF binary, is a collection of many compressed files. Right, it's a collection of many compressed files, compressed bytecodes, compressed binaries. So all these things are compressed in this file. You know, all these Python interpreters, all these source code, everything is stored in compressed format in this RC final binary. That's why if you look at the source code in Ghidra, it will say things like extracting code and decompressing code, all those sort of things. Extracting file not found. It's because when it runs, what it does is that it first decompresses this code, runs it, right, then runs it, right. So if you look up at PyInstaller also, if you search for PyInstaller and look up their specification, right, look their manual, you'll also learn about that. What it does is that it basically compresses the bytecode and then saves it, and while running it decompresses it and then runs it, etc., etc. That was why you weren't able to directly see the instructions or the code when we run Ghidra. If you want to confirm this, there's this tool called Binwalk. Binwalk, it will have a description. Okay, so it has a page. I also contributed in Binwalk as well quite a while ago. So Binwalk is a fast, easy tool useful for analyzing, reverse engineering, extracting firmware images. Right. So it's our purpose is to figure out extracting, right? If there's something to extract or not. If I run something like Binwalk, made a typo, Binwalk RC final, it will show so many things, right? zlib compressed data, so much compression, right? There's so much compressed data in this file. All of this data we extracted here. This is all the data that Binwalk is talking about, right? Fine, okay, cool. We extracted the data, now what? So now what we have is a bytecode, right? We have this file called rcfinal.pyc. You see this file? Python 3.9 byte compile. This is a file which we have. Mark the version here. It's 3.9. It's not 3.7. Okay. So this is the file which we have. Now we are supposed to get instructions from it, right? So let us view the instructions in some sort of an editor, right? Okay. This is kind of gibberish, right? You can't figure anything out from this. So what we could do possibly is maybe we could open it in any analyzer or something like, let's say Radar 2, right? To open this in Radar 2, could print the disassembly, we'll get the disassembly, right? These are all the instructions that are taking place, and these are the real instructions. These are, just doing some add. So these are all the assembly instructions. Drudging to them and figuring them out is really, really hard. So we won't be doing this in this session, but this is just to show that this is not any magic, right? You have all the instructions here. It's not magic what's about to happen, right? What's about to happen is not magic. You just automated something which you do manually. Okay, so we have this bytecode file called rcfinal.pyc, and now we need to get the Python source code from it. And there's a tool for this called uncompile. The uncompile 6 is a tool. I'll open the page for it, right? Uncompile 6, right? It's a tool which translates. Just a second. It's a tool which translates Python bytecode back into equivalent Python source code. Exactly what we are looking for. So uncompile, boom. Oh, sorry, my bad. I messed up the name, right? Uncompile this. Okay, we have an error, right? We have an error. It says that value error, bad Marshall data, etc. Unknown type code. So if you search what bad Marshall data is, what this error corresponds to, you'll soon figure out this is because the Python bytecode, the version is not correct, right? To us, the PyInst extractor also warned us, right? It also warned us that this is running in a different version. It should be Python 3.7, but we are doing it with Python 3.9. So you're supposed to modify the header of this file so that it becomes Python 3.7, right? So it's not as easy as just kicking in a few commands and boom, you are in. Now to modify headers, right? Yeah, and for that I have a page where the headers are listed. You can search it. There's a repository where the headers are listed. Just a second, I'll search them in my bookmarks. Yep. It's a repository by Google called PyType. You could check it out in your free time. It's an awesome thing. It's a static type analysis for Python code. Just give it a look someday. It's nice. So it has all these Python magic values, right? These are Python magic values. What are these? These are basically the headers of the files, headers of the bytecode files. So for Python 2.0, this is the header 2.1, this is the header 2.2, this is the header, etc., etc. We care about Python 3.7. We need the header of 3.7. Right, so we'll go down till 3.7. There are multiple headers, but I have tried and tested that this header works. Right, so I'll copy 3390. Right, I'll copy 3390. I'll get the hex value of it because we'll have to write the data in hex. So hex of 3390 is 0xd3, which is equivalent to 0x0d3. Right, both of them are the same. Both of them are the same. Adding a 0 in the start doesn't matter. 0x0d3, fine. So now let's check this hex of the file, right? We are again here. The file has 0d61, right? This is again little endian, right? I told you about little endian. Little endian means that the file format is such that the second byte comes before the first byte. So 0d3 would be written as 3 and 0d, right? This is what little endian means. But in this case, we have 6.1 and 0d, right? Which is not what we expected. This is the code for Python, what do you call it? Python 3.9. You can confirm it from here. This is the code for Python 3.9. If you want to confirm in your free time, you can do that. But we want it for Python 3.7. So what we'll do is that we'll modify this. We'll modify this and replace it with 3e. Fine. So 3e, right? We had to do some sort of code thing, right? Yeah, save changes. Yes. Yeah, I save the changes and I close it, right? And now if we do hex edit again, we can see it is modified. It is 30D. Cool. So now our thing should work, right? Now our thing should work. So let's run it again and cross our fingers. Okay. Successfully decompiled file. So did we get something here? Yeah, we got a file called rcfinal.py, right? rcfinal.py. And now if I open it in an editor, what will happen? Okay. Boom, we have the whole source code of the file, right? You guys can see this. While1, welcome to Shastra RC Final. This is without any source code. I didn't use any source code anywhere. I have the literal source code of the whole file. You can even compare what we are doing with what these guys are doing, right? For the hash, they are printing like what? They're printing these sort of stars in a for loop, right? So this is the literal source code of the whole file. You can literally copy paste this thing line to line from here to the submission box in Shastra, and you'll get the correct answers for everything. If you don't believe, I can even run this thing, right? We can even run this thing. You can even run this thing, we get the same thing, right? Same thing. Let's say 11, right? We get the whole same thing, 13. And this is just from the single file which we had, right? This is just from this single binary, we were able to get the whole source code and figure out everything. Like, isn't that awesome? Right? Okay. So now back to the presentation. Yeah. Behold the source. Voila. There we have the source code of the complete challenge in plain text, human readable code. Right? It's not as if it's obfuscated or anything. It's completely human readable. Right? I'll show that to you again in case you missed it. Right? So this is completely human readable. You can read this code. It's not as if it's like some weird code or some weird sort of things. You can read this. You can figure out everything yourself easily. Right? So yeah, I would request everyone to take a moment and appreciate how incredible it is that we have the tools that we can extract the source from the binary and decompile completely unreadable bytecode to human readable source code. I mean, if that's not awesome, I don't know what is, right? As a general note, usually reverse engineering or decompilation is never this easy, right? If you're doing any challenges in any CTFs, it is never this easy. This decompilation was way too easy because the people who created the challenge, it's a dig at Shastra people. So the people who created the challenge were not careful enough to obfuscate the script and strip out any debug info from the script. Right? By obfuscate, I mean that you don't just give the plain bytecode. You try and make it trickier to reverse engineer it. Right? You add some random things here and there. Convolute the logic convolute the logic and do all those sort of things, right? That is obfuscation. That prevents people from doing it manually, like we did. Or strip out any debug info. By debug info, I mean the info about the variable names and all. So I don't know if you guys have seen the source code of this thing, but the source code of this thing, right? The source code matches line to line. The source code of the problem matches line to line. The variable names are same, the function names are same, everything is the same. This is only possible because they didn't strip out the debug info, which contains the metadata, right? Variable names, etc., etc. If they would have stripped it out, this code would not have had variable names, right? This variable would be something like this, random name. That would have been much harder for us, to be honest, when we are reading the code. They didn't even do that, right? That is kind of not nice if you are creating a reverse engineering challenge, right? Thus leaving us with an extremely easy case of reverse engineering, right? So in the end, if you see what we did, right, we just ran two commands, to be honest. We first ran the PyInst extractor command, we got all the Python files. Then we modified a single thing, right, modified a single byte in PYC, and then we ran the uncompile command, right? This is like within 3 commands, we got the whole source code. Of course, you are supposed to know what 3 commands those are, but still, this is not some like secure thing or something. Anyways, sorry, I'll close this. Anyways, yeah, you can go to your friends and now say, look at me, I'm the hacker now, right? You can just go and boast in front of them because this is awesome, according to me, right? Just go and say that you're the hacker now. Okay, cool. That's it, yeah. So I guess we have been running for what? We've been running for almost an hour, a little bit less than an hour. Yeah, that's it. Thank you to all the people attending the session yet who are here till now. So there are 22 people which are much more than I expected, right? Thanks a lot, guys. I thought many people would drop off at halfway through, but yeah, it's an awesome experience to interact with you there. So thank you all of you who attended. In case, I hope all of you learned something, right? I hope all of you learned something new. And in case you didn't, like contact me, we'll do CTFs together, right? If you know this stuff, then you gotta be my buddy. So yeah, that's all. Looking forward to have some reverse coding 2022 winners from the audience, right? You guys know the secret tricks now. Yeah, we expect you to win reverse coding 2022, all of you, right? So that's all. Yep. Please fill the feedback form here, right? I've given the link. I'll share this doc soon in the group as well, so you'll be able to fill the feedback form. I don't think there's a chat here, so I can't share it in the chat. Yeah, it will help me and Sudeep and everyone to improve the future sessions. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions at all?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Couple actually. How do you contact you?
You can. Okay. I'll send. You can contact me on WhatsApp. I think you know me, right? I sent a message on WhatsApp just now. You can contact me on WhatsApp.
I will share the meeting recordings. With that, I will share your contact also.
Yeah, sure. I think.
And also.
Hello?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I also have one more question.
Yes.
Actually, when will this coding competition happen? In 2022?
I exactly don't remember, to be honest. I'm not in Shastra. I think you should ask any Shastra coordinator, the one which is handling coding and logic events. So you can ask them.
And also, like, how did you figure out all of this? Because it looks like, I have to ask you, how did you know all of this?
Yeah, basically, see, I have been doing CTS for a few months. So I would say almost a year. So I kind of know that these challenges are kind of easy to solve if you decompile the Python bytecode. So Python binaries which are compiled with Python are very easy to decompile. Right? There are loads and loads of decompilers. If you search for Python decompile Python bytecode, right? Python bytecode, I don't know. Yeah, decompile Python bytecode. You'll come across tons and tons of libraries which do this, right? This is a really common problem, and I expect that it could be solved easily with this thing rather than just guessing any inputs and all. It's just that you need to think out of the box, sort of thing.
Okay.
Also, I was not sure when I was starting out. I was not sure that I'd get this, but no, I just started out and figured out the things which I was missing, and slowly I was able to get the whole source code. Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially changing the header.
That also, that you should have experience of, right? So I also know about this, and if you are contributing tools like reverse engineering tools like Ryzen or Red Array, you would know that because these guys also have a Python decompiler. I think someone should mute them. Yeah, so these guys also have Python decompilers, right? These guys also have Python decompilers. So if you look around the code base a little bit, you would understand that what usually problems are, etc., etc. So I knew it from experience. Yeah.
Hey,
Hello,
can
can
do it
we reverse
Linux?
engineering?
Yeah, sorry. Someone was asking.
Can we reverse engineer a Microsoft OS files like that, Windows files?
Yep, you can. People have done it. People have even reverse engineered Grand Theft Auto. You know GTA Vice City, right?
Yeah. I like the
People
game
have
GTA
reverse
Vice.
those stuff. They have reverse engineered everything possible, right? Every significant thing possible has been reverse engineered by people.
But how will you reverse engineer that? They come encrypted, no? Like all the source code is encrypted, right?
No, the source code isn't. They don't even give the source code in the first place, but they'll give a binary, right? For example,
Sorry, the binary will not
no,
trace back to the source code, right? Like,
Win32.dll. There's this file called Win32.dll, right? This is their kernel source binary. Yeah, this is the one I think. Yeah. I'm not very familiar with Windows systems. I'm more of a Linux guy, but yeah, this is probably the binary. So you can. This is a DLL file, which is dynamically loaded, dynamically linked by library. So you can just analyze the code assembly instructions in that binary and figure out what the file is doing. And from what I know, nothing comes encrypted. Their source code files are decrypted only. Because if they came encrypted, that would be a huge performance loss for Windows, right? Because every time you need to run it, you will have to decrypt it and then run it. It will be a huge performance loss. And secondly, even if they come encrypted, that's no problem. Because when a process is running, you can always, set a breakpoint and analyze that process while it is running. And while it is running, it will be in the decrypted state, right? So you can just set a breakpoint and look at all the instructions which are being executed. So that's not a good way to stop people. It's like
I understand.
if you're good enough and if you know what you're doing, you can basically reverse engineering anything. You just need to have the and the talent and all, right? There's no alternative to there's no way to prevent people from reverse engineering. Except law, right? Law, yeah. You need to check your laws, right? If you publish this video and see me reverse engineering, and if my jurisdiction punishes me for that, I could be under fine, right? From what I know, there is nothing like that. Yeah. But yeah, some areas prevent this thing. So the only thing stopping you is the law. Everything else you can do.
Hello, can we reverse engineer the banking thing like that? It will be banking systems, banking apps. Can we do that?
The banking apps thing is they do almost everything on their server. You can reverse engineer the what do you call reverse engineer the user application, right? If you have the application of, let's say, SBI Bank, ICICI Bank, whatever bank, you can reverse engineer that application. But what you will see is that it is basically sending some data to its server somewhere, and that data gets computed there, and you get a response from there. So the job of that app is to only get some data, send that data, nothing else. You won't get anything from it.
Okay, bro.
Yeah.
Hey, you have used Kali Linux for this process, right? So how can we do this in Mac, and can we do this in terminal, or is there a specific environment for this?
Now you'll have to set up a virtual machine. Right now I'm using VirtualBox. Right, this is a open, like free. I don't guess it's open source. It's free virtual machine manager. I set up a Kali Linux image and I ran it. Right, so you can set up a VirtualBox. Right, I guess you'll get enough guides on the internet. Just search how to set up Linux OS in a virtual machine or something like that. You'll get enough guides.
So we need to use Kali Linux and a virtual machine, right?
No. The thing is, you'll have to use this sort of virtual machine. Yeah, virtual machine manager, right? It's a manager sort of thing. In that, you'll have to add the image of Kali Linux. Image is basically it's the image, right? It's the image of an operating system, and then you can run this image using this VirtualBox.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll have to allocate cores like, how much RAM do you want to give? I've given 8 gigs, how much processor do you have to give?
Yeah, that I will figure out. But
Yeah, that you
like,
have to figure out. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward.
what is the requirement? Like, why is this used for this? Is it like compulsory? Like,
No, not at all, not at all. That's why I explained, right? I needed Ghidra. Right, I needed Ghidra, that's why I opened this. I needed other things like PyInst extractor, all those things, right? This thing, where is it? Uncompile 6, right? I could also install this on my host operating system, right? I could also go here and do something like Ghidra and get Ghidra, right? I could also install Ghidra here, but I don't want to mess up my original operating system using with these, right?
don't don't combine with this all these external
Yeah.
files for our system.
Also, secondly, it's much safer to do it in a virtual machine when you are solving some boxes or something, right? Hacking boxes. But at that time, the risk is some player might breach some security measures and they might be able to get access of your computer. Never happens. There's just a hypothetical possibility that this could happen. In that case, it's safer to use a virtual machine because if anybody gains access to the virtual machine, they can't do anything with the outside file unless you have it in a shared folder or something. So it's much safer to do it in a virtual machine because if you mess up, you can always revert back. There's nothing of risk or anything. It's a virtual machine after
You
all.
can always destroy it if things go south.
Sorry, I couldn't get you.
No, you can always destroy it. Like, things go
Yeah.
really bad, you can always
Yeah,
get
and
rid
it's
of it.
containerization. It won't allow any app to access your files of your host OS, right? It won't allow that. Used for security. So yeah, that's safer to do it in that way. Yeah, any more questions, please, guys?
Yeah,
Anything?
one more. Is there any reason why the second byte is put before the first byte in that little ending?
Yeah, right now all the processors are little endian. I'll tell you why. See, there are also big endian processors, but right now the PC you are using, I can guarantee 90% that it's little endian. In fact, I can show you this host OS as well, right? Sorry, I'll have to run it again. My bad. Where is the Indianness? It usually shows the Indianness. I am not sure why it's not showing right now. Yeah, it's not showing the Indianness, but like my PC is also Indianness, right? So almost all the processes you use right now are little Indian. And the way I like to understand it, it is not correct, but the way I like to understand it, a way to remember it is that, let's say you have something like 0x 0D3, right? Yeah, so to be fair, it's like both of them are reasonable only. But if you want a trick to remember, you can just think like, if I need to add more bytes, they should go on the right instead of the left, something like that, right? So it's just the trick or something, but the truth is both of them work, right? I could have a PC with big endian, it would also work completely fine. It's just a way of arranging bytes. Why are there two ways? I don't know. Historical reasons maybe. But right now, almost all modern systems are little endian. Almost all. Like
Okay,
computer.
so 0x 0D3 will be written 3E 0D 0x, is it?
Sorry, yeah, what? I couldn't catch you.
No, like 0x 0D3E will be written as 3E 0D 0x in the assembly code, is it?
0x is just a specifier for hexadecimal, right? 0x is
Okay,
nothing.
okay, right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. 0D3 will be written 3E 0D. Or it will
Yeah,
be
I'll explain the
E3E0.
Yep. I'll explain the reason why I think, like, how I remembered that this has to be little endian is that, let's say we have a number like 0x10, which is 16. In little endian also it will be 0x10, right? Because there's a single byte. So
Yeah.
0x10. I think I should use different numbers. Yeah, this should be 0x11 and 0x10. Okay. Now if I add a higher byte, right? If I'm adding something higher byte, right? Let's say 0x12 1011. Then it will be like 0x12, 0x11, 0x10, 0x12. So basically, if you add larger numbers, they should be coming after the smaller numbers. That is what I think that's how I remember it.
Okay, so you take them as pairs and then the last one comes first like that.
Yes. Pairs for hexadecimal, if you have bytes, you can directly take the bytes. So the way I And is that, this could go till infinite, right? I could make it as large as possible. That means I need to have that much space, right? So where do I have that much space? I have that much space here. So, those fill from left to right. Very, very, useless sort of interpretation, but just like a trick if you want to remember or something.
Yeah, I understand.
Not reasonable, but it's like just a trick or something. Whatever.
No, but it makes. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, finally you guys know how exactly it works under the hood. I would encourage you to read up on these things, right? How is Python bytecode decompiled and everything. It is an interesting read. Usually most of the developers don't care about these things, which is not nice. You should definitely know what's happening under the hood. I'm not asking you to learn all of this, but like it's always nice to know what's happening under the hood, right? Extra information never hurts. Yeah, I would encourage you to do read up on this. Maybe look up a few blog posts, etc. Very interesting to me, at least to me. I hope you guys also like get fascinated by this. Try some reverse engineering. Look at a few ways you can reverse engineer. Learn how it works. That will be really nice. I'll be happy to talk about this topic anytime. So feel free to contact me. I'll leave my Sudeep will leave my contact number in the feedback form message. Yeah. So that's it, folks.
Yeah, so I will share the feedback form with all of you. Please make sure you fill the form, because if we share any certificates or swags, then we can only share with them who will be attending the session, and we will be marking your attendance using the feedback form only. So I will share the feedback form with all of you with the slides and the recording of the session. So please fill the feedback form. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Please do
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
How did you start participating in CTFs?
Yeah,